I am on my way to the division. We are sitting in a Russian cottage in some dump alongside the divisional route of advance. I will take command of the divisional security platoon. The tanks, now coming out of the repair shop, will not be deployed at the front anymore, at least for the moment. That also means the Führer's secret weapon won't be deployed either. There were still plenty of Russians lying in the Dnieper region, many of them unburied. And who among us would have time to do so when we are busy burying our own comrades, who lie kilometre after kilometre under their birchwood crosses? The many Russian prisoners marching along the roads don't care about their fallen either. White Russians and Ukrainians have become just as apathetic as the national Russians. One never finds Finns serving among them. Estonians, Latvians, Lithuanians have long since defected and returned home. And the Armenians and Caucasians, forming the intelligentsia here in Russia, care only for their own wounded comrades. I don't understand these people. Here in front of Moscow, a large number of Mongolians are fighting. Behind us at the Dnieper, the Russians had a large concentration of armour. And what kind of armour that was? We looked at a 7.62 armed tank of the most modern design, a kind which could well be fielded by us too. But still, our Lancers shot it to pieces, even though it was heavily armoured, of the most modern design, and carrying a gun twice as long as that in our Panzer IV. The daughter of our host, Katya Stepanova, said to me that with Russian soldiers and German technology, one could dominate Europe. Little does she know. I have chatted a lot with the girl. Tomorrow they have a bank holiday here, just a day in the week where no one does any work. Yesterday, Voss and I drove until it was dark. Today, around noon, we reached the division. It's always the same old tune when one reaches the staff. Finding a place to sleep is easier with the rank and file. Today, there was still fighting at Kalinin. In the village of Priechisloye, there are the graves of 21 soldiers of the 14th Infantry Division who were killed in the fighting at the anti-tank trench. I am feeling quite well. The swaying in a driving car is much easier to bear than that in a rolling tank. The division has run out of fuel. The roads along the way are lined with vehicles that can't go on because they have run out of fuel. Zurhausen, who has our rifles on his lorry, has run out as well, and in addition, one of its wheel hubs has broken in two. It is now 5 p.m. and it is already dark. Just then, a few girls have been visiting, relatives of the 100-year-old woman. They have immediately been drafted for potato peeling duties. One of them looked like the movie actress Christina Soderbaum. They are quite naughty, these girls. They pretend not to understand what we are saying, and then they continually talk about us. I have been invited to dinner with the IB Hauptmann Holtzmann. With my Kubelwagen, I am standing in front of the Dnieper Bridge on the road to Moscow. The big concrete Russian bridge has been blown up, and there are masses of traffic queuing in front of the new crossing. Supplies for the front have priority, while I, a little sausage of a liaison officer, am forced to wait for hours before I can resume my journey. I am in the middle of 3 rows of queuing vehicles. 3 days ago I came from the other direction, and since then I have hardly slept or eaten, and I'm dog-tired. And I had taken my task so seriously. When I reached Werkstatt, one of the division, Hauptmann Schreiber had already arrived before me and done most of the jobs. Hauptmann Schlottmann does a lot of work in that workshop for the IB. He knows of his concerns and understands them well. I'd better not tell him what Siebert said, or he might commit suicide out of despair for the desolate fuel supply situation. Desolate is a new favourite word of Hauptmann Schmoll, whom I met on the way. God, the man has some problems. And he doesn't even realise when one is taking the piss out of him. With all the jobs the IB gave me, I returned to Siebert after visiting W1. Guckel, the adjutant, informed me that Oberstleutnant Siebert has been transferred to take command of Regiment 33. The regiment, based in Ostmark, Vienna modelling, was equipped with Panzer 3 and 4. The young crew are also mainly Austrians, and I am sure our old Papa Siebert knows how to cope with them. He surely had to be more stern with us Prussians. We are now getting Hauptmann Stern, and I am sure I will feel the new wind from above once I return to the old company. Many of our officers don't realise how good our old commanders have been. Siebert is leaving. Last night he invited us, the old men of the Abteilung, to have dinner with him. It was quite nice and comfy there, The usual experience when one sits down with Siebert. He even had some absinthe for us, and later some proper burping water, Russian champagne. Siebert will marry after the war. Krautvig and I, Hiller, the pastor's son, are the only ones who still have to do so. Before the war, we laughed about Wiltz, Leonhardt, Glasgen, and all the others. And today we are all very serious about it. The war surely does change people. I wonder who will be the first of us three to marry. When they asked me about it, I joked and replied that I would run a contact ad in a newspaper. Adventurous young man seeking... Hiller seems to have cheated on his sixth form girl. Anyway, enough of this. Time will tell, and I can't look into the future. It has taken me the whole day to travel 56 kilometers, and I have to find accommodation before I reach Yasma, which is another 60 kilometers away. These roads are just terrible. It's now pitch dark. I have to come to an end. We nearly reached the area of Yasma. Around midday, Voss slid the car sideways down a slope, colliding with an oncoming car. The blacked-out headlamp on the front bumper was torn off. Thus, we could see little in the dark and didn't really make any progress. Now I'm sitting in the parlour with the divisional clerks. I stayed here previously. There are 2 little girls here. One of the little girls is named Nyura, a variation of Anna, and the other is called Katya. I just asked about their names, so I don't have to call them Panienka all the time. I've also been to the post office to sort out mail for the company. It's based a couple of villages away in an old church, where they are currently sorting 300 sacks of mail. One of Hauptmannbaum's lorries brought another 150 sacks. If there's nothing for me in there, it must be the devil's work, or I have been forgotten. I'm really excited about it. The divisional staff received mail twice today. Well, they are sitting at the source. Mail. That is a subject of the greatest importance, especially when there hasn't been any for several weeks. I really hope that there will be a few nice letters for me tomorrow. While I am writing here, the Unteroffizier of the divisional staff are starting to make music. One, a very sympathetic-looking guy who would have made a good frontline soldier, plays the violin. Another, with strong chin and cheekbones, who doesn't look stupid either, is accompanying him on the accordion. I can't wait to go to a concert in Hamburg again. Music! How long has it been since I heard good music, even via the radio? They often play the song of the sentry under the lantern at the barrack gate, and every Lanza will sing along when it's blaring out of the wireless. But long term, that is nothing for me. No one can eat pastries and sweet dishes all the time. It makes one feel sick. I had a chat with the medical orderly here and found out that in his civilian life, he had been a clerk in the Melita company. I like to talk to people to find out more about them and what they do. It helps me to judge them, and that is quite important out here. Voss, for example, who is sitting next to me at the moment, would also make a good combat soldier, even though he is not very bright. But he has a certain kind of character that would work well alongside Oswald, Engelhardt, and Albert. There have been lots of changes in the company. Steinbusch and Zimmermann, who was with me when the drama behind the Russian lines unfolded, were decorated with the EK2. Unteroffizier Albert, who was in my platoon, and Unteroffizier Wilhelm, the old companion of the boss, are to be promoted to Feldwebel for cowardice in the face of the enemy. Franz and Krautwurst are receiving the same promotion according to schedule. Several new officers have arrived, including Siegel, who was with us in Wunsdorf. There he insisted that the other Unteroffizier not address him informally, as he had already undergone officers' training in Putlos. He also made a fuss when shown the graves of Jupp and the other comrades. He is, simply put, still an idiot. He ended up in 7th Company with Theo Langenbruch. Hillenkamp, a very calm and quiet man, a lawyer, has joined the 5th Company. However, they will likely be transferred to the Panzer column or to the workshops of the division soon, which is the solution the IB would prefer. There are over 100 vehicles waiting for repair there, and they need someone to manage all the crews. Next to the W1 workshop in Kulm, there is a prisoner of war camp or some kind of collection point. The Russians there have to camp in the open, and in the past few days, many of them didn't wake up in the morning. These were then fully undressed by their comrades, who then distributed the clothing among themselves. They are being fed with the meat of slaughtered Panjay horses. I have seen how the ravenous Russians swarmed, like a pack of starving wolves, over the carcass of a dead and half-decayed cow. The sentries use long sticks to batter the prisoners, to prevent them from catching diseases from eating the rotten food. I feel sorry for the prisoners, but on the other hand, the Russians exhibit such laziness and lack of organizational talent that it also makes me angry. In Alfakovo, for instance, they let the potatoes rot in the field and didn't go to cut firewood, but instead broke down the village fences and barns. The men, mostly old Rasputins, don't work at all. They just sit there and stare at us. In the best case, they muster the energy to complain that they have nothing to eat, no firewood, and that they are cold, hungry, and lacking everything. It's a tragedy, but if these lazy people worked instead of complaining, they would be in a better situation. They cross themselves 10 times and then start blathering in such a way that we can only understand half of what they are saying. When we tell them to sweep the houses and wash the muddy floors, no, they refuse. They equate work with rabota, which comes from the word rab, meaning slave. That's how Russians view work. How differently Germans think about working, earning, and spending. I've had the task of being an animal catcher. Last night I caught 19 bugs. It was quite an ordeal for me, as I was lying right next to the wall and suddenly noticed that my entire coat and blanket were covered with the little pests. Anyway, because of last night's bug hunt, I've become more cautious and will make sure to make more use of my field bed. I am not interested in contracting any of the diseases spread by those little bugs. Soon Voss and I will collect our mail. I am looking forward to seeing the faces of the clerks here when they see me with my pile of letters. There will be a lot after 4 weeks. At 9 a.m. I saw Hauptmann Holzmann, but there was nothing new for me. Within the next few days our Abteilung will move to Jasma, and I am not giving up my duties as orderly any time soon. Otherwise I might also end up in the workshop company as a crew overseer. The thought of the enormous vehicle columns on the roll barn daunts me. I, the little worm, will have to spend many hours queuing again. There is still no better place than with the furthest tanks at the front. Catching a chicken in an abandoned village and chucking it into the pan, or catching a cow for the field kitchens, isn't a problem there. It only gets complicated once they realize that I speak and understand a bit of Russian. Then the wailing women gather in a crowd, counting on their fingers the number of their many children who relied on that cow's milk for nourishment, and who will now face starvation. The Russian women here look more like Eskimos than Europeans. With their felt boots, sheepskin skirts, and thick headscarves, they present a wholly uncivilized appearance. And their main occupation during winter seems to be the creation of more and more babies. Nothing new under the sun. Just like in the days of the stagecoach, we stand here with a broken wheel, and all the mail and orders for the workshops have to wait with us until the damage is repaired. Voss, my driver, was right after all when he always drove so slowly. The suspension would probably have broken long ago otherwise. We felt utterly dismayed by our bad luck. With the broken wheel, we managed to roll into a nearby village, where we sought shelter from the relentless rain inside a small cottage and tried to fix the damage ourselves. However, there wasn't much we could do. But when I talked to a Hauptmann from the vehicle park, he directed me to a vehicle repair shop. Repair shop? What kind of repair shop? I asked. Well, one where they repair cars, was his reply, which eased my mind. There's a car repair shop of the 35th Infantry Division in the village. I quickly sought out the artificer, and if our cart could roll into the village, it could surely make its way to the workshop as well. And indeed, Voss managed to get the car to the workshop, where it is now standing under a tarpaulin, ready to be repaired tomorrow. Now I sit here in a cottage, where an old woman lies on her deathbed. She is suffering from consumption and coughs constantly. We soldiers are not bothered by that. It's just one of many ways to die. We have seen much worse. Last night there were still many Lancers of the 35th Infantry Division in the village, all from the supply services. That was quite apparent. The only exception was a Feldwebel who had just been transferred there. He was 36 years old and had once been a member of a student association. He was not stupid at all. I learned he was a cultural historian, born in Leipzig, Saxony, and in civilian life, the director of the town archive in Stuttgart. I enjoyed our conversation and learned a lot from him. Today these men are gone, and I doubt we can continue our drive to Jasma today. It's a shame, as we can't leave here quickly enough. The roads are completely ruined. It's hard to even recognize the rollbahn. Bumps and deep furrows have replaced what was once a runway. The infantry supply columns on the main road are incredibly long, with horse-drawn vehicles on both sides. Trying to avoid running over the horses makes it virtually impossible to move forward in a motor vehicle. There's not much I can do to help repair my car, which means I have more time to write. Yesterday, a piece of loose metal from the chassis tore apart the oil supply hose for the foot brake. We just ignored that and continued driving without brakes. Whenever we needed to stop, Voss simply pulled out the ignition key, and the car would immediately become stuck in the muddy road. Outside, a bit of autumn sun is shining through the clouds. If there were peace, one could take a lovely walk through the leafless forest. I can't help but wonder if in the future, Theo Langenbruch or Willem Loop, while taking a weekend stroll with their wives and children, will ask, "Is that forest clear of the enemy?" Or, "Are you sure there is no anti-tank gun in there?" That thought makes me laugh. I am sure Willem will teach his son how to deploy troops properly, the right way to approach a forest, how to make use of the terrain, and what a good defensive position looks like. But when will that be? When will we drive on German ground again? And when will I get my next period of leave? If it continues like this, we might have to celebrate Christmas with Russian families. Or will our division be depleted enough to be pulled out of the line? The artillery units have already been consolidated. S4 has been combined with 114 and K6 with AA57. Our regiment has been turned into Kampfgruppe Löw. The 28th Infantry Division has recently withdrawn over the Rollbahn and is now to be transported to Smolensk. And when will it be our turn? Hauptmann Anhalt is on his way to Gzhatsk to find quarters there. Our Oberst, with his now unemployed staff, has been made town commander of Kalinin, and our division is securing the area there. The left wing cannot advance further because there is no fuel. There we were with Reinhardt, while Guderian, also without fuel, was forced to watch the Russians pack up their stuff and evacuate Moscow. The infantry is relying on the motorized troops, while the motorized troops are hoping the infantry will sort it all out. However, the infantry, with its horse-drawn units, is not making much progress either. When will the encirclement of Moscow be complete, and who will close it? Now then, little man with great concerns, it will all work out, and it is going to happen soon. When will the real winter come, and when will I be returning home? Just now there are 4 girls sitting in the farmer's wife's parlour, distracting me from writing. One of them had been a young communist, a typical Slav, but the liveliest of them all, and she even knows a few words of German. Damn, now I can't really write anymore. Another girl is Ukrainian from the Kharkov district. She is quite beautiful, with a face yet unmarred by Bolshevism's harshness. Her build is slim and tall. Ah well, how can I fall for such a dream? She is Russian. I am German. That's the end of it. Today I am sitting in the divisional workshop 157th, having my car repaired. It needed a new brake cable and the forward tie bar had to be bent down. The things one gets as a mail and divisional courier. We are not losing any sleep over our provisions either. There is enough for us everywhere. Well, what else shall I write in my diary now? That I am sharing a table with some mechanics who are playing Russian bank. Not exactly thrilling. These war mechanics are fed up with the situation here. Day after day, they have to trudge through the mud outside, keeping a hawk's eye on the vehicles to prevent them from being stripped for parts by members of the numerous units descending on the workshop. Everyone has their own troubles. Hauptmann Novak, who runs the assembly here, is looking for an officer to supervise the guests of the workshop, that is, the drivers and crews of the vehicles that arrive here. Hauptmann Schomburg didn't get enough fuel to continue his journey, and as his vehicle was also damaged, he resumed his journey with Oberleutnant Marx. Yes, Marx, this crablouse, is now an Oberleutnant. Marx is the swine who has spoiled the career of my good fellow combatant from the bad Lipspringer days, SS Lieutenant Werner of the Sicherheitsdienst, here in the Panzer Regiment. The beggar still has eggshells sticking to his behind, but wants to write assessments of old men. I went on a short stroll with Theo, and we had a bit of a chat. We discussed his marriage and what he'll do for a living after the war. After all, he is probably Germany's best stenographer. Wilhelm Loos is out and about with Hauptmann Anhalt, and both are staying overnight. Lieutenant Hillenkamp, a doctor of law and somewhat cumbersome, is off to Smolensk to collect some fuel. In Kotelki, I ran into Lieutenant Siegel, who was on his way to Rogechinskaya to find some oil and had become stuck with his vehicle. He had to be towed out by a tank. While that was happening, he observed the tank of Uff's, Mola, which still contained the charred remains of 3 panzer men, whom Hiller, the pastor's son, didn't want to recover. It looks like I will have to do that job myself. When it comes to the recovery of a comrade's body, I don't want to hear excuses about ptomaine or other things. The least we can do is to create a proper grave for their mortal remains. If only we could do more. Now I am sitting here watching the mechanics. Voss has fixed the car, and one can hope that the foot brake is now actually working. Slowly but steadily, we are fixing the old sled. In the workshop of the fish division, where I was made very welcome, they didn't have the plethora of different vehicle types that we have, but then they are a newer formation. Here in the W1, there is much more to do than over at their place. I am just reflecting on the types of people one encounters out here. In Lagotchi, I stayed in a house with a 103-year-old woman. Down at the workshop, I stayed with a woman on her deathbed who was suffering from consumption, and just behind the Dnieper, Voss and I shared a house with a bunch of released convicts. Near Workshop 65, I was staying in the bug-ridden shack of a Cossack, when a woman rushed in and asked who among us could speak Russian. Then she shared her troubles with me. Her husband had been imprisoned for 6 years. Her father had been in prison for over 10 years. And now, aged 79 and broken in body and spirit, he could no longer work. She didn't look bad, and her 4 children weren't exactly starving either. My thoughts go back to last night, when we were at the Dnieper, and how we managed to bypass the 12-kilometre-long column of vehicles queuing up on the bridge. I had taken off my coat and stood on the footboard in my black uniform, with all my medals clearly visible. I had my pistol in my trouser pocket, with the handle of the 08 sticking out. Thus, all the pursers and NCOs must have thought, "Oh, this guy comes from the front and might be rough-mannered enough to shoot me down if he feels angered." In any case, no one dared to stop me and let me pass, even though it required a lot of shouting and cursing. That way, I even managed to get to the front without asking the bridge commander, a Hauptmann of the infantry. I simply crossed by joining the Nebel Regiment 52, which was going over at the same time. In the darkness, I then drove north for about 5 kilometres and found myself a place to stay. Enough for now, the electric light will be switched off soon. The generator is needed for charging. Last night it started to rain, and since then the pitter-patter has not stopped. Dear me, I am stuck here and can't go any further. Just like that, the roads have become unusable. There I was yesterday, claiming that one slowly gets used to the conditions in Russia, and now, all of a sudden, a new chapter of experiences has opened up. However, I am in luck, as there is fuel to be had here at the airfield at Köln, where I drove on the advice of Hauptmann Novak. I have now taken quarters with a very clean Russian family and intend to stay here for as long as my supplies last. The roads dry up or frost sets in again. That might take until the end of the week. At the moment, there is a waxing moon visible during the day. That will change in about 7 days. Voss tried to park the vehicle near a house and ended up in a foxhole. While he was trying to sort this out, I left him alone, annoyed because he had decided to ignore my advice and drove as he liked. I went inside, sat down at a table, and began reading the Das Reich newspaper. Cultural news, theatre play reviews, and so on. There's a photo of a play in the Deutsches Theater in Berlin, Schiller's Die Räuber. The actress in the role of Amalia is Ursula Berg, Uschi Campe-Berg from Osnabrück, whose mother was at our National Theatre around 1934. Damn, I had to think about those days when I was friends with Peter Berg, and when Friedel Marschall and Otto Söstmeier had fallen in love with Uschi Berg. She was a year younger than I and attended the Lyceum. Friedel and Otto failed to connect with her. From the beginning, Uschi had been a member of the National Sozialistische Schulebund and the BDM. When you visit Osnabrück today, all the girls our age are either married or already widowed, like the wife of Klaus Hilmer. Waldemar Heckmann has been killed too, and who knows who else from our age group. Yes, and Uschi Berg is in Berlin, becoming famous. She surely will. After all, her mother wasn't bad either. I have to tell that to Marshall when the war is over. I'm already looking forward to seeing his face when I tell him that. I also think about old Himmelmann, the pacifist. I wonder what he's up to now. I think about Remarque and his sister. Will I not return with the same feelings he had after the World War? Only for me there will be no Ilse and no war profiteer like Bartscher. When I go home, the gymnasium will still be in Der Wester, and the gas lanterns will still be burning. Ah well, I don't want to think about all this anymore. For me, there will only be work after the war. Work and then some more work. Think about Job Wellinghoff, who also won't be with us anymore. I wonder if Rabbit Kommerich is still alive, and Otto Surstmeyer, and all the other classmates. Now then, an end to thoughts like this. We are still in Russia, and there is still a lot to do here. The road to the Volga at Yaroslavl is long, and there is no way we can get there without fuel, oil, and bread. I wonder how we are going to sort out the supply problem. Surely not before the frost sets in. Now we are in the 19th week out here. In 14 days it will be November 9th. And our division is still at Kalinin, not at the Volga at Yaroslavl, where it was supposed to be by now. When will all this come to an end? Outside there is still mud and dirt that is impossible to get through. How long is this going to continue? How long? But then, what about the soldiers down in Norway or other remote places, cut off from the world, places dark as night and covered in snow? Compared to what they are facing, we are better off here, so I will stop moaning. There is still a chance that we might get back to Germany in the foreseeable future. How will the infantry feel when they arrive here to relieve us? How will those boys feel? Voss has gone off to deliver mail to the aircraft currently standing on the airfield, which will take the wounded on board. He also wants to refuel while he is there. C3 with engine oil supplement. That way we might have a chance of getting out of this area where everyone is craving fuel. I can't really write at the moment. I am obviously homesick. In the summer, the mosquitoes were dancing outside, and now, when I look out of the window, it's the snowflakes doing the same. I have to think about Hamburg and the bachelor's den I plan to set up there. When I have my own place one day, it has to have an open fireplace where one can sit in the evenings. The house would have a thatched roof, a low building with only one floor, like those behind the dikes and on the heath at home. One like the cottage of the communist Look. A place like this, or similar, is what I want to own later. But it has to be far away from the city, far out where nobody can disturb me, and where only my best friends can find me. Yes, friends. I can't imagine a life without comrades anymore. Outside there is a blue sky now, and the sun is shining through the clouds. Will it continue to smile for me? Me, the daydreamer and spoken Kika. A motor tractor of the 7th Panzer Division is rolling past. The sound brings me back to reality, reminding me that today we'll launch another attempt to get through. I wonder if Stern is still there, and if there will be any mail waiting for me. As soon as the laundry is dry, I'm out of here. I would really like to receive some mail. Maybe something has arrived. I have now sat at the table throughout the entire morning, looking outside where one moment the sun is shining and the next, snowflakes are drifting. Very slowly, I put one piece of chocolate after another into my mouth and let it melt slowly on my tongue, relishing in doing absolutely nothing except thinking about home. Oh, the things I will do on my next period of leave. I will definitely go skiing. I wonder if Frau Goldman will be at the Frohe Heimat again. I really need to write to that energetic little woman and her husband again. I'm thinking about Martin Look and his silly, pointed red silk hat, and how he tried to pair me off with the Dutch girl. Such a clever guy. Good that I never danced. I'm reminiscing about our tour to the Alps in Kitzbühel and the grandiose mountain scenery there. By God, how beautiful that was. And now, here I am in Russia, amidst all the mud and dirt. Now there are some infantrymen in the other room warming themselves up. What a bunch of pigs these brothers are. One of them has inflated a rubber condom and knotted it with a piece of string so that the air can't escape. Then they gave that thing to the Russian children to play with. I'm sure the mastermind behind this operation is a Catholic. It's the typical piggishness I've already experienced in Westerode. I really had to laugh when Major Dr. Topf pulled several products of the most recent erotic handicraft hour out of the reporting pouch of Mueller from the recon platoon. Incidentally, the farmer here in the house participated in the campaign in Poland, where he was wounded in the leg by shrapnel. As such, he doesn't have to serve anymore and has been spared the grief and concern about his family. His neighbour is my age. During the winter war with Finland, he was badly wounded by a shot to the stomach. These two veterans are now sitting here, wondering when the war will be over. They were surprised to learn that Timoshenko isn't in charge of the central sector anymore and has been dismissed by Stalin. That was news to them. They are both wearing quilted jackets and thick fur caps. I showed them our earmuffs, which were unknown to them. The Russians here also take photographs and pin them to their walls. They have now started heating the room to speed up the drying of our laundry, which is nice and white. The woman has washed it well. It's now dark outside. I have finished a long letter to Karl Bongart and am sharing the table with the Russian family, who are currently eating. I have become accustomed to the champing and slurping, a custom in all Russian families. First, a big bowl filled with some kind of meat and potato stew and bread is put on the table. The father cuts the bread and distributes it among his children, who are sitting on the bench in age order. Katya first, then the boys, Vidya and Vasya. All of them use big wooden spoons, popular all over Russia. I have also found these spoons on most Russian soldiers, often shoved into their boot shafts or puttees. I noticed that the breads are decorated with a cross, similar to those found in our farmers' families in Westphalia and the surrounding areas. When I asked one of the boys about it, he replied that it symbolized making the sign of the cross during prayer. If the soup is finished before the bread cut by the father, a bowl of milk is placed on the table and spooned out using pieces of the dark rye bread until it's empty. I've noticed that the women, while eating, and generally keep their headscarves on, and the children keep their caps on too. No one seems to see anything wrong with that. The people also sleep in the same clothing they've worn during the daytime. Now and then they take a bath in the banja, which can be found everywhere. Just a moment ago, a 56-year-old kolkhoznik visited us. In the last war, he fought against us and can even read a few German letters. He told me that in the old days, he owned 25 acres of land, 2 cows, 2 horses and several pigs. But now he's a kolkhoznik, working tirelessly, but owning absolutely nothing. Our host laughed when I asked if he had been a kulak once. He replied no, he didn't own the required 9 acres, but he didn't have to give anything away either. They are all hopeful that we'll reintroduce private property. For now, though, we have to continue living off the land and be a burden to the Russians. The Russians live remarkably simple lives. Always potato soup and bread, with never much of the latter. They only have a little petroleum and are clueless about other cultural assets. They are in awe of our writing paper, pocket lamps and all the other stuff. The woman is delighted whenever she gets our empty food tins, as metalware of all kinds is rare in the Soviet Union due to the army's priority. These are the effects of Stalinism and its 5-year plans. We could make good use of the large amounts of flax produced in this area, and with a bit of synthetic fertilizer, one could also harvest a large amount of grain from the Dnieper region. Damn, if they'd give me 10,000 acres of land over here, I could turn that into something. The front and rear differential of my car are broken. It was probably caused by the sudden frost on the night from Tuesday to Wednesday. All the parts have frozen together. A Russian-made 4x4 car from the W1 workshop has towed me to a village 3 kilometers away, where I am now comfortably quartered as their guest. This morning I was served a cup of bean coffee in bed. Yes, in bed. I share a large room with the artificers, and they have made themselves nice foldable metal beds that they can take anywhere. For me, a standard folding field bed and accordion used to be the height of luxury, but what I found here really surpasses that. The artificers have brought several copper pots with them from the Leningrad region. I have seen that kind of ancient handmade copper crockery on all the farms there. I like it a lot, even though it is less practical than enamelled aluminum crockery. The copper stuff would be ideal to furnish my weekend cottage. Anyway, I am not a war profiteer. Currently, Hauptmann Novak is here. Everyone is already a bit stressed because of the 2 broken-down prime movers they have here, and just now an Oberfeldwebel of the artillery has arrived, towing 2 more broken prime movers into the yard. What a joy! One needs to make sure that this Oberfeldwebel doesn't realize what plans we have for his beloved prime movers. If he knew that we plan to scavenge them for parts, he'd surely take them away with him again, broken as they are. It is evening. I have bimbled around like this all day. The Stabsfeldwebel is in bed with a burned foot. I have kept him company for a while and shown him some of the pictures I've been sent from home. He wants to go home too, but for now prefers to stay with his unit, as that is much better than being in a hospital somewhere. I've witnessed this on the airfield when Junkers 52S arrived to take away the wounded. The heavily loaded planes were then unable to take off from the soft and wet ground, and were forced to unload their sad cargo again. No, I can't endure the war anymore, especially here in the rear area with hospitals and prisoner camps. All the heart-rending scenes that play out here, I can't stand it anymore. I am close to tears now. I just can't bear it anymore. The 20th Sunday in the Russian campaign, and the mood is just like the weather. Dim, very dim. Hemmenbach is currently singing a Zara Leander song, the one from the film Zu neuen Ufern, which goes something like, "I am standing in the rain, waiting for you." In the next room, I can hear the loud voice of Hilgenstoller, who is sitting with the Hauptmann. Outside, in the large room where the men of the guest company Asterisk and the Russians employed as mechanics are staying, the tall, pale Obergefreiter, formerly of the DBP Asterisk, is playing the banjo, accompanied by a man from the workshop on the harmonica. Yesterday, when I glanced into that room, I saw the Russians dancing to the wild yet monotonous sounds of the balalaika. I really wanted to join their dance, just for the joy of moving. What are we still doing here, in a division as battered as ours? Yesterday I bathed in the Banja. The steam did wonders, reducing the effects of my cold. It didn't hurt my ears, contrary to what I had expected. We used water from a small shell hole, so we didn't have to worry about contamination. But generally, all streams and larger craters are full of unburied Russian bodies, posing a serious risk of ptomaine poisoning. The water supply situation in Cholm is extremely challenging. There are no wells. All water must be sourced from nearby areas. I still can't get out of here. There has been no proper frost yet. Even if there had been, I couldn't have left yesterday as I wasn't feeling well. On Saturday, I upset my stomach, probably due to the abundant consumption of liquor. The boss arrived just as the artificers, the dispersing officer Quatic and I were emptying a bottle of bitter orange liqueur. He then ordered us, and that was at midnight, to organise a couple more bottles. I guess we emptied those too quickly, at least too quickly for my stomach. Together with the artificers, I persevered until 4 a.m., until the last drop had been drunk, and then I went to bed. For warmth, I am sleeping right next to the oven. The alcohol had a maximum effect. I was properly poisoned. Hauptmann Novak had ordered me to drink several extra glasses, filled to the rim, claiming it allowed him to judge my character. That didn't quite work out, however, as he became drunk much quicker than I did. Anyway, one has to experience something like that. Today I am feeling a bit better, and soon Hilgenstoller and I will go to the airfield to order a Storch. Adalbert is supposed to fly to the IB to report about the terrible situation the workshop companies are in. Now it's evening and we haven't been able to get a Storch. The Staffel to which it belongs is based in Kalinin, and the last Storch to arrive today only brought supplies and soap. No one knows when it will return. When we were heading down the main road in Sanovo, I noticed a grave on the side of the road between the houses. I walked down to it and read, Panzer, 11. I could hardly believe my eyes. It is the grave of our missing Oberfeldwebel Bunzer. So the Russians did shoot him too. At least we know now that he hasn't been dragged away by them but died a soldier's death at their hands. I can still see him, lying next to me in the shallow enemy trench. firing his machine pistol until it jammed after the second magazine. When I think about those terrible hours, my heart convulses. Right now I can still feel the same indescribable fear I felt in that trench and when a bullet went right through my cap. Damn, I don't want to experience such a situation again. This morning, Voss and I drove down to Sanovo to photograph Bunce's grave. We plan to send the photographs to Bunce's parents so they have an idea of where their son is resting. We first tidied up the grave as well as we could, then decorated it with fir twigs. The infantryman who had buried him had done a very respectable job in designing the grave. However, the tumulus had collapsed a little. Voss and I repaired everything and also removed the withered flowers. The dark green of the fir twigs contrasted nicely with the white of the birchwood cross. When we left the village, we saw that an aeroplane had landed alongside the road leading to Cholm. The pilot was visiting someone in the village. My hope of him taking me as a passenger was quickly dashed, as he only had 30 minutes to spare. However, he did take my report and promised to pass it on. In it, I reported that I would leave here on November 7th, together with the vehicles of Cologne 10. I wonder how far I will get with this group. There are about 28 different vehicle types, mostly man lorries. Now the real work and the real trouble start. The boss is here debating the supply situation with Quatek. I was outside to check the practicability of the roads. Today we somehow have to organize fuel, and tomorrow I have to signpost the route. Although I am certainly not inexperienced in leading such columns, the size of this ragtag group will make finding accommodation difficult. The big troubles of little men. Yesterday, Hauptmann Novak sent a dispatch rider to take a message to the division. He returned this evening on foot, with the remnants of a ripped transmission chain. He had driven into a frozen and straw-covered bog hole, sinking into the mud up to his waist with his motorbike. When he, with the help of some locals, pulled the bike out, he found that the chain had broken. We are lucky that I managed to send a report out with the aeroplane.